Yes, thank you for staying. My name is Bill Hart. I'm a board director for not director, board member of MNFF, and a professor emeritus of history here at Middlebury College. So, my great pleasure to welcome Dan Levin here to the stage. Remarkable film. As the moderator, I get to ask a couple of questions, and then I'll turn it over to the audience. So, I'm sure you're familiar with how the monuments came down. Hannah and Lance's film that focuses on Richmond and all those monuments along Monument Row. But you chose to focus on Charlottesville and tell the story through a few characters, but primarily Wes and Will. Could you talk a little bit about how you made that choice?
Sure. Well, I mean, it really came down to what documentaries usually comes down to is access. And we all watched the events. I made this film with my co-director Eric Newman and producer Darryl Davis, and we, saw Wes when it happened on CNN, on the news, and my partner Eric actually reached out to him blindly. He was so moved by seeing him, and they started a relationship, and they became friends really. And it took us a while to sort of get him in a place that he wanted to tell his story in a film, and we all had sort of our preconceived notions of what had happened that day, and obviously when the statues finally came down, that was in the news, but it felt like we didn't really know how it happened from the inside, and specifically from Wes, that he was such a major part of this. So he invited us to come down for the 5th anniversary, so we shot this in 5 days over the 5th anniversary, and yes, 5 days.
The whole film in 5 days?
The whole film in 5 days, yes. And it all just happened organically. I mean, we had never met Will, we had never met Courtney. Wes introduced us to them and said, it's time to tell our story, and these are the guys that are gonna do it. And it really all started with that run, which is sort of the spine of the film. That was the first morning we got there at like 4:30 in the morning or something, and it was the day of the anniversary, and that was sort of their therapeutic run to start the day. And we tagged along, and they went into all the different places where the events had happened, and we just were stunned by the end of it, and really thought that there was a story that nobody knew, even though everybody had seen the news, and the Vice piece was out, and Nat Geo did something. It was a lot of it was focused on white supremacy and obviously the violence, but not on the community and not the people who had lived through it. And the aspect of, once all the cameras go away, what does this community do, and how do they deal with the trauma that they lived through? So that's what we were interested in doing.
Which I thought was a fabulous choice to make that, to focus on the community, not just the legislative process, but the members of the community, how they felt about it, and how they responded to the previous, 2017, a lot has happened. So thank you for that. I was really struck by the two characters, Wes and Will. They're really compelling figures in your film. But I was also interested and intrigued by what Wes says at the end of the film, that he no longer calls for unity. And of course, the buzz initials these days in the academy and business elsewhere is DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. Yet he says, I only want respect and equity right now. So, but Will's experience seems to be that the community united around what happened in Charlottesville. So, where do you stand on this?
Well, I think and I can't speak for Wes, but I think what he's meaning is the larger sort of division in the country, that, people are different, as he says, and that's okay. And as long as we respect each other, that gives us the room that we won't hurt each other. And I think there's a lot of, we've lived through a lot in the past 10 years, even 5 years, but I think, public figures have been pushing people apart, and I think that has, lost people respecting each other, especially people that are different than yourself, or where you came from, or what you look like. And I think that was his sort of, it's like, the United States is never going to be perfect and be unified, but as long as we all respect each other, we won't hurt each other, and that is a step forward.
Well, I just can't believe you shot this in 5 days, and it sounds like it went, I'm sure it had its challenges. What were some of the challenges you had in just 5 days?
Well, the shooting, it was the easy part. It was like any documentary, independent documentary, it was editing it and getting the money to really put it together in the way that we needed to put it together. And Manuel Crosby, who's the editor, did an amazing job. I mean, you know, yeah, props to all the editors out there who are in their own rights amazing storytellers. And we really had an idea, you know, we knew we had something here and we had sort of a spine of an idea of what the film could be like. And thankfully he worked with us and helped us really pull it together. And so yeah, I think the challenges were really, once it was shot, it's like, how do we actually finish this?
Exactly. Well, thank you very much. So now I want to turn it over to the audience and ask if any of you have questions. I think the acoustics in this space are not great, so I'm happy to run the mic around to anybody who has a question.
I'm curious, like, how the community received you guys filming, you know, coming to that community as outsiders, and then, like, you know, you shoot 5 days, everyone knows there's a documentary going, and then you're off editing. Was there feedback in that process as you had cuts? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, we of course showed cuts to Wes because he was just so involved, and he really sort of was the bridge to the whole community. He brought us in. I think a lot of people, including Wes, like sort of just forgot about it. It was like, these guys are gonna make a film, okay, like let us know when it's done. And so once we showed like a real like cut to Wes, he was blown away and he was like, oh my God. And we actually did a screening early in the summer in Charlottesville for the whole community, and that was hugely important just to everybody that's into film. And you know, it was in this classic old theater that's in the downtown mall, and it was really moving and amazing. I mean, someone like Will, watching him react to the film, and everybody supported it. So it went over well, and I think they all felt like they were represented well.
Others? Other questions?
Did any white supremacy folks show up to that screening?
They didn't. I didn't know what to expect, but no, nobody caused any problems at that screening, and yeah, I think, thankfully.
I overheard you say you live in Charlottesville and you know some of the subjects?
Yeah,
Do you care to offer
so
a
I
comment?
just moved to Charlottesville from New York, very different move.
Yeah, a lot of the people, Eric, like you say, is a friend of mine, and I've been to his apartment recently. He's an amazing photographer, awesome guy. It's a small town, so I recognized quite a few people and just sort of in the background, lingering there. And I don't really know what else I can contribute except that I live there now. And it's kind of, I was saying this to some other people, it's kind of like the Burlington of the South in a way. It's just, you know, college town. It's a lot of nice places to eat, lots to do, good place to raise kids. And you know, most people only know Charlottesville from this event. So I think it's great that you made this film to educate people about what happened, because I think everyone should know. It's a major moment in American history. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you consider including a white supremacist in the...
We didn't really, because I felt like so much that had been done about Charlottesville was through the eyes of the white supremacists and through the alt-right. I mean, I can count 4 off the top of my head films about that subject that were shot on that day that followed alt-right characters through that experience. So I felt like I didn't want or need to shine any more light on them telling their side of the story. They did that. And the first piece that came out when that all happened that most people saw was this Vice piece that went viral, and that was all from their point of view. And actually, a lot of people that worked with us on the film, sound guy, the DP, really the sound guy, he was the sound guy for that Vice piece, and even his experience, he was scarred from that. I mean, when I called him, I was like, oh, we're doing something about the 5th anniversary, and he was like, I gotta be honest with you, like, you know, I worked on the Vice piece, and it really was a horrible experience. Like, you need to tell me exactly what you're doing, or I won't even consider it. And he, living through making, you know, the 5-day shoot, sort of, I mean, it was almost unbelievable to see his sort of I don't want to say healing, but his sort of process of dealing with it as well. So yeah, I felt like we didn't need that side of the story. We needed the community side.
I have a short question and a longer one. The short one is, do you have any kind of distribution?
Are there any plans for distribution?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the plan. We are talking to a bunch of different distributors and hoping to get it out by the election, which is going to be tight, but if not, by the end of the year. But yes, it will get out there.
And my longer one is, so there's a whole row of people here who went to college with your father. And I learned yesterday that your grandfather also was a documentarian. So I just wanted to ask you about what that was like to choose this kind of work with all that tradition.
Yeah, well, my father's here in the back. Shout out Mark Levin. Yeah, listen, Mark, his father Al are amazing storytellers in their own right. I learned everything from my dad. And, you know, like I learned how to shoot a camera through him. I shot a bunch of his films. I learned how to tell stories, through, you know, from him. And it's just sort of felt like a natural extension of what I needed to do, being surrounded by it my whole life. And even the subject matter like this, I mean, the first real film that I shot was a series called Brick City that we made about Cory Booker in Newark, New Jersey. And that was an inside look at, you know, how a city works through politics, through the police, through gangs. So a lot of that I see in this film, you know, the inner workings of a city. It's another community. So I feel like, yeah, it's an amazing to have a father that is an amazing storyteller and an amazing filmmaker.
I have a quick question for your dad, Mark. Yesterday you said that political films have a challenge being distributed these days. Do you think this film will get airtime?
I'm going to do my best to help make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think it is a hard time for political films, and not that this film is obviously political because of the subject matter, but you know, we tried to sort of keep it as a storytelling, you know, as a character-driven film. But yeah, I think a lot of distributors and the market is sort of waiting to see what happens in the election, you know, and are really pushing towards, you know, content that you can lose yourself in and that isn't shocking and political. So it is a tough road, but we are going down it.
Question in front. And just let you know, it's 1:15. If you had plans to grab lunch before the 2 o'clock showing, but we can take 1 or 2 more questions.
You said that the prolific run was the first thing that you had shot when you got down there. I'm curious, did you kind of immediately recognize that that was going to be sort of the backbone of the doc, or was that something that came about later in the editing process?
We realized that immediately. I mean, that's when we knew we had a film that, you know, that could serve as the sort of arc of the film, going back and forth between time. And so that was always part of the plan. And I think once we shot that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people experience this. You shoot a scene, you shoot something, and you're like, wow, there is a movie here. Like, this is a movie. So when we shot that, we knew we had a movie.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Quick one, kind of on the same line. Did you know you had all the council stuff? Because that really fleshes out kind of the background. Did you have that before you went down?
No, we had to go find that. Yeah, so that was an amazing layer to the film, finding all that footage. Yes, was a gold mine. But we did not have it when we didn't really have anything. I mean, Ezzy, the photographer, he had agreed to share his photography with us, so that was sort of like the first piece of archival, and he had documented so much that had happened, and his photography is beautiful and shocking and all of that, and you know, he has a little sub-story about him showing his work on the 5th anniversary, so we knew that we had imagery from him, but we had to go out and find everything else.
Shall we let that be the last word? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.